Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to speak to the women who have given their all, poured into relationships, waited patiently, loved deeply, and sometimes lost themselves in the process. But hear me when I say this, there is power in detachment. I'm not talking about bitterness. I'm not talking about walking away with anger. I'm talking about stepping back with peace, with confidence, with dignity. When a woman detaches, she's not giving up, she's rising up. You see, a woman who detaches isn't weak, she's wise. She's no longer chasing what doesn't chase her. She knows her worth, and she's no longer trying to convince anyone else of it. And let me tell you something, men can't resist that kind of strength. Detachment is often misunderstood. People hear that word and think it means you've stopped caring, that your heart has turned cold, or that you've given up. But real detachment isn't about closing yourself off. It's about opening yourself up to a better way of living. It's not weakness, it's not surrender, it's not throwing in the towel. It is strength in its purest form. It takes courage to step back from what you once held dear, especially when every part of your heart is screaming to stay. But sometimes staying in situations that diminish you, that deplete you, that ask you to shrink, that's what real weakness looks like. Detachment, on the other hand, is a declaration. I love myself enough to walk away from what no longer serves my peace. There is a difference between detaching and disconnecting. Detachment doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop controlling. It means you stop tying your emotional well-being to how someone else treats you, what they do, or whether they choose you. You can still love someone and let them go. You can still wish them well without wishing them back. When you detach, you stop placing your joy in someone else's hands. That's when you start reclaiming your power. You stop chasing, you stop begging, you stop explaining why you're worthy. And in that quiet strength, something in you begins to heal. You begin to realize that you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. It takes more faith to let go than to hold on. Anyone can stay stuck. Anyone can keep spinning the same cycle, hoping for different results. But it takes a woman of faith to say, God, I don't understand why this is happening, but I trust you. I trust your timing. I trust that you are leading me to something better. When you detach, you are surrendering your plans for something higher. And that kind of surrender isn't passive. It's powerful. It's you choosing your peace over chaos. It's you choosing your dignity over desperation. You're not weak for stepping back. You're wise for recognizing when something isn't aligned with the future you're building. Detachment is an act of emotional maturity. It's when you've cried the tears, prayed the prayers, replayed the conversations in your head, and still decide to stop fighting for something that keeps hurting you. It means you're not trying to manipulate the outcome anymore. You're not trying to prove your value. You've already proven it by how you showed up, by how you loved, by how you gave your all. And now you're choosing to give that same love to yourself. That's not selfish. That's self-respect. Detachment means you're no longer willing to betray yourself for temporary affection or inconsistent attention. A detached woman is a powerful woman. She walks different, talks different. Her silence speaks volumes. Her boundaries are clear. Her time is valuable. She doesn't need to make a scene. She becomes the scene. There's something deeply magnetic about a woman who's at peace with herself. She doesn't need to argue. She doesn't need to defend. She doesn't need to prove her worth to anyone. And that energy, that calm, confident energy, shifts rooms. It shifts hearts. It makes people think twice, especially the ones who once took her for granted. They begin to realize that she was the blessing they didn't see, the peace they didn't value, the love they didn't earn. Detachment allows space for healing. When you're caught in cycles of emotional dependency, you can't see clearly. You can't hear God clearly. Your peace is tied to someone else's actions, and your identity becomes wrapped in what they do or don't. When you detach, the fog lifts. You start to see yourself again, the woman you were before the heartbreak, before the disappointment, before you began shrinking yourself for someone else's comfort. And little by little, you remember who you are. You're not just a woman who loves. You're a woman who deserves to be loved right. You're not just someone who shows up. You're someone who deserves to be met with the same energy. True detachment is a doorway, not a dead end. It's a shift from striving to surrender, from clinging to clarity, from fear to freedom. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it takes time. But eventually, what once kept you up at night no longer holds power over you. What once broke your heart no longer breaks your spirit. You're no longer tied to who didn't see you. You're rooted in the one who created you. And from that place, from that grounded, powerful place, you begin to attract relationships that reflect your growth, not your wounds. That's not weakness, that's transformation, that's strength wrapped in grace. Confidence is a spiritual glow. It's not about loudness. It's not about walking into a room and demanding attention. It's about walking into a room and not needing it. A confident woman doesn't need validation to feel valuable. She knows who she is, not because someone told her, but because she learned through every trial, every setback, every silent prayer. And let me tell you, men can't resist that kind of energy. It's not ego, it's essence. Confidence radiates from the inside out. It's quiet, it's calm, and it's powerful. You don't have to chase when you know you're the prize. There is something undeniably magnetic about a woman who stands tall in her identity. She's not shaped by the opinions of others. She's not swayed by trends or peer pressure. She's grounded, rooted. Her identity doesn't rise or fall with who texts her back or who gives her attention. She could be in a room full of people or sitting alone on a Friday night and still feel full. That's the kind of woman who catches a man's eye and stays on his mind. Why? Because her value isn't based on performance, it's based on presence. She just is. And that being, that unwavering, anchored sense of self is what makes her unforgettable. A confident woman is clear on what she deserves. She's not arrogant, but she's also not available for anything that doesn't align with her worth. She doesn't settle for half love, mixed signals, or emotional crumbs. She's not impressed by charm. She looks for consistency. She's not wooed by words. She watches behavior. And that kind of clarity, that kind of inner knowing, it shifts the atmosphere. It causes the wrong ones to fall away and the right ones to rise up. It challenges men to level up, to be intentional, to approach with respect, not just attraction. Confidence weeds out confusion. Men are naturally drawn to what they can't easily rattle. When a woman is secure in herself, she becomes a mirror. She reflects back to a man where she's growing and where she's lacking. She challenges him simply by being. Not because she's trying to fix him, but because her presence calls for something more. And that pull, that push makes her stand out. She's not easy to impress because she's not waiting to be chosen. She's already chosen herself. And when a woman has chosen herself, she operates differently. She doesn't chase, she attracts. She doesn't compete, she creates space. And that space, when filled with peace and power, is what men find irresistible. Confidence is born from healing, not hype. It's not just about getting dressed up, taking selfies, or quoting affirmations, though those things can help. True confidence comes from doing the inner work, from walking away when it's hard, from staying silent when you want to react, from choosing growth over comfort, from knowing that no matter who stays or leaves, you're going to be okay. And when a woman reaches that point when she realizes her survival doesn't depend on someone else's love, she becomes whole. And wholeness is magnetic. It draws in people who want to build, not just borrow your light. Confident women don't just attract, they inspire. They set a new standard. They remind men that emotional availability is attractive, that respect is non-negotiable, that healthy love doesn't play games. A confident woman isn't afraid to be vulnerable, but she doesn't hand her heart to someone who hasn't earned it. She's open, but she's guarded with wisdom. She gives love freely, but she knows when to walk away. And that balance, that blend of softness and strength, that's what sets her apart. That's what leaves an imprint. She becomes the kind of woman who can't be replaced because she never tried to fit a mold to begin with. And here's the truth. Confidence is spiritual alignment. It's knowing you are who God says you are. It's walking in your purpose even when the path isn't clear. It's trusting that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, not for everyone, but for the right one. It's not about being loud or dominant. It's about being aligned. And when a woman is aligned, she glows. She leads with grace. She leads with intention. And whether men understand it or not, they're drawn to it because there's nothing more beautiful, nothing more powerful than a woman who knows who she is, knows what she carries, and refuses to settle for less than she deserves. Self-love is the foundation of every healthy relationship. When you truly love yourself, not in a superficial, performative way, but in a deep-rooted spiritual way, you stop tolerating things that threaten your peace. You stop looking for someone else to complete you because you already feel whole. And let me tell you something. That kind of love, it's magnetic. The moment you begin to honor your own heart, your own body, your own mind, people around you start responding differently. The energy you put out shifts. You walk differently, talk differently, you glow. You're no longer desperate to be loved because you've already given yourself what you were asking others to give you. Self-love is not selfish, it's sacred. It's you saying, I matter too. It's waking up and choosing yourself, especially in a world that keeps telling you to be everything for everyone else. It's refusing to abandon yourself for the sake of being liked, chosen, or approved. A woman who loves herself isn't hard to love. She just doesn't beg for it. She's not bitter. She's aware. She's not guarded. She's selective. And that awareness, that discernment, it creates an atmosphere. People feel it. Men feel it. They know they can't just come into her life with inconsistency or confusion because she knows what she brings to the table and she's not afraid to eat alone. The truth is, people treat you how you treat yourself. If you're constantly putting yourself last, downplaying your needs, accepting less than you deserve, others will mirror that. But when you love yourself, when you speak kindly to yourself, rest when you need it, set boundaries and walk away from things that hurt, you teach the world how to handle you. You become a living example of what respect looks like. You attract relationships that reflect the love you've already cultivated within. And that's not a coincidence. It's a consequence of growth. Self-love is a signal. It quietly says, this is the standard. If you want to be in my life, you need to rise to it. There's something irresistible about a woman who's content in her own company. She's not filling time, she's living intentionally. She's not afraid of silence because that's where she meets herself. She's not afraid of solitude because that's where she meets God. She's not using relationships to escape, she's using them to expand. And when a woman reaches that level of inner fulfillment, her presence becomes captivating. She doesn't need to perform to be loved. She simply exists as she is, whole, unbothered, at peace. And that peace, that calm, radiant energy, that's what draws people in. It's what keeps them curious. What's different about her, they wonder? The answer? She finally decided to love herself first. Self-love creates boundaries, not walls. Some people confuse the two, but boundaries are healthy. They protect your energy, not isolate your heart. A woman who loves herself doesn't cut people off for no reason, but she also doesn't allow access to people who continue to harm her. She doesn't explain her standards because her life reflects them. She doesn't chase closure because peace is more important than proving a point. That maturity, that grace, that quiet strength, it's attractive, it's magnetic, because she's not coming from a place of lack. She's not trying to fix broken people to feel worthy. She's already full, and fullness is attractive to those who want to build, not drain. When you love yourself, you stop settling. You stop shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. You stop ignoring red flags. You stop staying just because you're afraid to be alone. You become bold in your decisions. You know your time is valuable, your presence is a gift, and your energy is sacred. And because of that, the people who approach you can feel the difference. You're not playing hard to get. You're just not easy to distract. You're not playing games. You're protecting your peace. That distinction matters. Because the kind of woman who knows her value doesn't move with urgency. She moves with intention. And men, they notice, they sense it, they respect it, even if they don't say it out loud. The world is drawn to women who love themselves because they remind others of what's possible. A self-loving woman doesn't just inspire others, she gives them permission. She shows others what it looks like to rise from brokenness, to grow from pain, to find beauty in the healing. She's not perfect, but she's powerful. She's not without flaws, but she's full of faith. And that kind of love, the love that starts on the inside, becomes a light on the outside. She doesn't beg to be seen anymore. She doesn't have to. Because when a woman truly loves herself, she becomes impossible to overlook. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can say is absolutely nothing at all. When a woman gets quiet, it doesn't mean she doesn't care anymore. It means she's done explaining herself to people who never really listened. It means she's learned that peace is more valuable than proving a point. It means she's shifted from reaction to reflection. That silence, that calm refusal to argue, to beg, to justify, that's strength. That's growth. And whether he says it or not, men notice, because silence from a woman who once gave her all says everything. Men hear silence differently when it comes from a woman they took for granted. They might not have heard her when she was crying. They might not have listened when she was expressing her needs, but the moment she goes quiet, really quiet, a shift happens. That silence speaks of boundaries. It speaks of dignity. It speaks of a love that has stopped fighting to be noticed. There's nothing more sobering than the moment a man realizes the attention, the affection, the effort is no longer there. Not because she doesn't care, but because she's done pouring into someone who doesn't pour back. That realization hits harder than any words ever could. A woman who chooses silence isn't defeated, she's discerning. She understands that energy is currency. That her time, her words, her emotions, they are sacred. So instead of casting her pearls before people who don't value them, she retreats. Not to disappear, but to reconnect with herself, to rebuild her peace, to heal, to reset. That's where her power multiplies, in that quiet place, in that secret place. And when she reemerges, she's not the same, she's stronger, softer, wiser, louder in spirit, even if she says less. Because silence is never empty when it's rooted in self-awareness. It's full of answers, full of clarity, full of power. Silence sets a boundary words sometimes cannot. There comes a time when talking no longer works, when explaining, defending, and pleading only drains you. That's when silence steps in. It draws a line, it communicates. You no longer have the same access to me. It doesn't come from spite, it comes from survival, from wisdom, from emotional maturity. A woman who uses silence well is not cold, she's clear. She knows that not every battle needs to be fought out loud. Some things are best left unsaid because the absence of your voice will echo longer than your words ever could. Men may not always respond to your voice, but they always respond to your absence. There's something about a woman's silence that lingers. That silence lives in his thoughts. It forces him to reflect, to wonder, to replay everything she said while he wasn't listening. And here's the thing. When you stop talking, you give him space to finally hear himself. That silence is a mirror. It shows him the parts of himself he ignored while you were trying to love him. And that reflection, that's what makes him realize your silence isn't punishment, it's protection. It's you preserving your spirit. God often moves in our silence. When you get quiet, you begin to hear his voice more clearly. That still small whisper reminding you, you are enough. That divine nudge telling you, be still, I'm fighting for you. When you stop explaining yourself to people, you give God room to explain your absence. He'll show them what they didn't see. He'll reveal what your love truly meant. You don't have to make noise to be understood. Sometimes the most anointed thing you can do is say nothing and let the fruit of your healing speak for you. Because silence, when paired with faith, becomes a weapon. And no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Silence is sacred when it comes from strength. A woman who detaches with quiet confidence holds a power words could never capture. She's no longer performing, no longer persuading, no longer participating in cycles that drain her. She doesn't raise her voice. She raises her standard. And that elevation, that shift, it demands a response. The people who once overlooked her start wondering why she's no longer available, why her energy feels distant, why her spirit feels different. And by the time they figure it out, she's already moved into a new season. Because a woman who learns the power of silence has already outgrown the noise. Detachment isn't bitterness, it's wisdom with boundaries. When a woman detaches, it doesn't mean she's angry, doesn't mean she's giving up. It means she's finally listening to what her soul has been trying to tell her. This isn't feeding you anymore. Detachment is not a door slammed in anger. It's a door closed in peace. It's the realization that love should not be confusing, exhausting, or one-sided. So she lets go, not because she doesn't care, but because she finally cares enough about herself to stop holding on to something that's hurting her more than healing her. We've been taught that holding on is strength, but real strength is knowing when to let go. A woman who detaches is not weak. She's finally stepping into her power. She's no longer available for inconsistency. She's no longer chasing potential. She's no longer trying to prove her worth to someone who doesn't recognize it. And that shift, that holy shift, it's not about rejection, it's about redirection. It's about protecting her heart, her peace, her energy. It's about making space for something that aligns, something that nourishes, something that doesn't make her question her own value every time she lays her head down at night. Detachment protects what clarity revealed. Sometimes God allows things to shake so that what is not rooted in Him will fall away. And when a woman sees clearly, when she realizes she's been settling, compromising, silencing herself just to maintain a relationship, that clarity births courage. The courage to walk away without drama. The courage to release with grace. The courage to say, I love you, but I love me too. That's not cold. That's sacred. That's a woman finally understanding that our heart is not a battlefield, it's a temple. And if someone cannot honor it, they do not get to occupy it. A woman who detaches isn't hard. She's healed. She's no longer reactive. She's not fueled by emotion, but by alignment. She's learned the hard way that forcing love, fixing people, and carrying relationships on her back only leads to exhaustion. And so she lets go, not in despair, but in trust. Trust that what is meant for her will never manipulate her. Trust that real love will never require her to beg, prove, or shrink. Trust that by stepping away, she's stepping into something better, even if she can't see it yet. Detachment is an act of faith. It's her saying to the heavens, I know you have more for me. Men are not confused by detachment, they're convicted by it. When a woman detaches from a place of peace, not punishment, it speaks. It speaks louder than begging ever could, because detachment says, I no longer need you to see me. I see myself now. And that self-awareness, that healing, that peace, it can't be ignored. That's when men start realizing what they lost. not because she made a scene, but because her silence, her growth, her absence became too loud to forget. That's what happens when a woman stops fighting for a seat at a table that was never meant for her. She builds her own. Detachment is not about shutting people out. It's about letting yourself in. It's about reconnecting with your own voice. It's about finding joy again without emotional turbulence. It's about choosing yourself and doing so without apology. You're not rejecting anyone. You're just no longer accepting treatment that makes you feel rejected within. You're no longer signing up for anxiety disguised as love. You're not punishing someone. You're protecting your future. Detachment is what happens when a woman finally believes she deserves soft love, consistent love, safe love. The kind of love that doesn't come with confusion as a side effect. When you detach, you make room for divine alignment. You step out of survival mode and into surrender. And surrender is where God works best. That man you thought you couldn't live without, watch how God restores your joy without him. That relationship you tried so hard to fix, watch how God sends peace once you stop trying to force what no longer fits. Detachment is not rejection. It's God whispering, "Let go, daughter. I have better." And when you obey, when you trust, when you release, you don't just lose what hurt you, you gain what's holy, whole, and worthy of who you've become. Peace is magnetic. In a world full of chaos, drama, and emotional noise, a peaceful woman stands out like sunlight in a storm. She doesn't have to raise her voice. She doesn't have to prove her worth. Her calm does the talking. Her energy tells the truth. And men, whether they realize it or not, are deeply drawn to that kind of presence. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, not the most attention-seeking, but the most grounded. The woman who protects her peace becomes the one others want to be around because she brings something rare, stillness in a world that's always spinning. Peace isn't passive, it's powerful. It's a decision. It's a discipline. It means choosing not to respond to every insult, not to engage in every argument, not to take every bait. It means knowing that not everything requires a reaction and not everyone deserves your explanation. When a woman stops allowing people to pull her out of alignment, when she chooses her peace over her pride, when she lets things go that used to drain her, something shifts. That glow hits different. That aura becomes sacred and men notice. Because peace is not boring, it's captivating. It's what keeps you sane when everything around you says, react. The woman who walks in peace is not easy to rattle. She's not moved by mixed signals or mind games. She doesn't argue over her worth. She already knows it. She doesn't get pulled into emotional roller coasters. She chooses emotional intelligence. Her peace didn't come easy, so she protects it like treasure. And that energy, that quiet confidence, it creates space. It creates safety. A peaceful woman becomes a refuge, not because she carries everyone's burdens, but because she refuses to add to the chaos. She doesn't chase, she aligns. She doesn't compete, she elevates. And that elevation changes the atmosphere. Men crave peace more than they admit. At first, they might not even know what it is. They'll just feel different around her. Calmer, safer, more clear-minded. And that's because a peaceful woman doesn't need to dominate the moment. She is the moment. Her presence slows the room down. Her smile softens walls. Her energy shifts the conversation from surface to soul. That kind of woman, she's unforgettable. She doesn't have to perform, she just is. And when a man has been used to chaos, that calm becomes both comforting and convicting. He realizes, this is what I've been missing. This is what I need. A peaceful woman chooses her battles and sometimes chooses not to fight at all. That doesn't mean she's weak. It means she's wise. She knows when to speak and when to stay silent. She knows when to lean in and when to lean back. She knows when to say, this is not mine to carry. That kind of discernment creates emotional safety. And emotional safety is attractive because it tells a man, you don't have to perform here. You can breathe here. A peaceful woman doesn't tolerate dysfunction disguised as passion. She doesn't glorify the ups and downs. She wants peace, and she brings peace. And the right man, the grown man, will honor that. Peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of perspective. It's not that she doesn't go through storms. She just doesn't let storms live inside her. She's learned how to pause before she reacts, how to pray before she panics, how to walk away when her spirit says, this isn't for you. That depth, that spiritual maturity, that emotional regulation, it's attractive in a way that beauty alone could never be. She becomes someone a man can build with, not just chase. Someone he can confide in, not just admire. Someone who multiplies the love in his life, not the noise. And that's rare. That's sacred. That's peace in motion. A peaceful woman has presence because her spirit is at rest. She no longer needs validation to feel valuable. She's already approved by God, and that approval silences every doubt. She doesn't show up to prove. She shows up to serve, to shine, to stand in who she is. And that identity, that wholeness, that quiet strength, that's what attracts the kind of man who's ready. Not the ones who want attention, the ones who want alignment. Because peace is not passive, it's a sign of purpose. And a woman who protects her peace becomes the kind of woman no man ever forgets. Emotional control is not about suppressing what you feel, it's about mastering how you respond. When a woman learns to regulate her emotions, she becomes unshakable, not because she doesn't feel, but because she knows how to channel what she feels. She doesn't explode, she processes. She doesn't spiral, she prays. She doesn't react from insecurity, she responds from clarity. And that level of maturity, it's magnetic, it's powerful, it makes her irresistible to the kind of man who's tired of drama and ready for depth. Because peace, strength, and poise under pressure, that's rare, and real men respect it. A woman who can sit in her feelings without letting them run her life is a woman in full bloom. She's not cold, she's in control. She can express herself without losing herself. She knows when to speak and when to wait. She's able to pause and ask herself, is this emotion guiding me toward truth or pulling me into turmoil? That internal pause, that sacred moment of checking in with herself before unleashing her energy, that's wisdom. That's strength. That's what keeps her from being manipulated, from being triggered, from being led by anything other than truth. Emotional control is not a lack of passion. It's the height of self-awareness. We often think power looks like dominance, but real power is discipline. When a woman no longer allows anger, insecurity, jealousy, or anxiety to drive her, she becomes incredibly powerful. Because now she can see clearly. She's no longer blinded by emotional storms. She no longer lets someone else's behavior dictate her mood or decisions. She can walk away from a conversation, a man, a situation, not because she's numb, but because she's not willing to lose herself, to keep something broken. That power, it commands respect. And men feel it, even if they don't fully understand it. They feel it. The most dangerous woman is the one who no longer reacts to everything. She's not stone-faced. She's not emotionally unavailable. She simply reached a level of inner peace where she doesn't let every little thing disrupt her flow. She's grounded, she's centered, she's full of discernment. You can't bait her into arguments. You can't rattle her with games. You can't confuse her with breadcrumbs. Why? Because she's not looking for external validation anymore. She's checked in with herself. And when a woman is no longer moved by chaos, she becomes a force that cannot be manipulated, only honored. Emotional control sets the tone for every interaction. When a woman knows how to manage her emotional space, she sets the energy in the room. She becomes the thermostat, not the thermometer. Instead of reacting to everything around her, She creates the atmosphere she wants to live in. She speaks with grace. She listens with intention. She leads with softness, but don't mistake it for weakness. Her softness is laced with strength, and the right man will see that. He'll admire her ability to stay calm in the storm, to stand firm without yelling, to make her point without raising her voice. Because that's not just emotional control, that's emotional intelligence. When God gives you emotional control, He's giving you dominion. Dominion over your triggers, dominion over your past, dominion over your inner world, so that you're no longer at the mercy of who hurt you. That's when real healing starts to shine through, because now you're not just surviving, you're choosing. Choosing what you respond to, choosing what you give energy to, choosing what you let inside your heart. And that emotional gatekeeping, that is the work of a healed woman. That is spiritual warfare won in silence. That is maturity dressed in dignity. And that, more than any outward appearance, makes her deeply attractive. Men are drawn to women who master their emotions, not because they're perfect, but because they're safe. Safe to talk to, safe to be vulnerable with, safe to be human around. That emotional stability becomes a sanctuary, not just for herself, but for those around her. She becomes a place of rest, not resistance, a place of clarity, not confusion. And that kind of woman, that kind of inner strength, it doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it doesn't force, it attracts. Because emotional control isn't about holding it all in. It's about knowing when to let go and when to hold firm. And when a woman masters that, she becomes unforgettable. The way you love yourself sets the standard for how others love you. You may not say a word, but how you show up for yourself is teaching every man in your life what's acceptable and what's not. If you neglect yourself, settle for less, tolerate mistreatment, and constantly put others before your peace, that's the lesson, that's the permission slip. But when a woman carries herself with self-respect, when she nurtures her body, guards her mind, protects her peace, and refuses to compromise her worth, she sends a clear message without ever having to explain it. This is the level of love I accept, nothing less. You are the blueprint for how a man will treat you, and the first place that blueprint is built is within. A woman who prioritizes her own emotional and spiritual health becomes untouchable in the best way. She didn't just attract attention, she attracts respect. She doesn't just get compliments, she gets commitment. Why? Because when you take care of yourself, you show him how to take care of you. You model it, you live it, you embody it. You are not waiting to be chosen, you've already chosen yourself. And that kind of self-investment doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't overextend. It receives, it attracts, it aligns. When a woman raises her standard internally, her entire reality shifts externally. She no longer entertains inconsistency. She no longer explains why she deserves to be treated right. She simply lives as someone who knows her value. And that's louder than words. That woman doesn't fight for a place in anyone's life. She walks in such grace and certainty that the right people honor their access to her. And any man who steps to her knows, if I want to be in her world, I've got to come correct. Not because she threatened him, not because she punished him, but because she taught him by how she treats herself what love should feel like. Self-love is the most powerful relationship you'll ever model. A woman who affirms herself doesn't wait on affirmation. A woman who keeps her word to herself doesn't tolerate broken promises from others. A woman who takes herself seriously doesn't accept being treated as an afterthought. And that's the kind of internal power that speaks for you even when you're silent. Men pick up on that. They may not know how to put it into words, but they feel it. She doesn't need me, she chooses me. And that choice, when it's rooted in wholeness instead of lack, creates a relationship dynamic that is rooted in respect, not control. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't serve you, you teach him that you will abandon yourself to keep him. That's not love. That's a pattern of self-sacrifice disguised as loyalty. But a woman who is healed, who has grown, who has learned to honor her feelings, she doesn't play small to keep peace. She knows that peace is not the absence of conflict, it's the presence of alignment. And sometimes alignment means walking away from anyone who doesn't love you the way you've learned to love yourself. That's not selfish, that's stewardship. That's what God calls us to do, protect the temple of our soul. When you treat yourself well, you invite others to rise to your level. You show up dressed in excellence, speak in kindness, walk in purpose, and suddenly the people who can't meet you where you are will fall off. And the ones who see your value will rise up. A man who sees a woman with strong self-respect doesn't want to play games, he wants to step up. Because a woman who honors herself makes it clear, I don't compete for love, I don't chase it, I attract what reflects me. And if he's not ready for that, she doesn't try to fix him. She moves forward with grace, with peace, with her crown still on. You don't have to demand love when you become love. When you treat yourself with patience, kindness, softness, and discipline, you become a mirror. A man will either rise to the reflection or remove himself from the room. And both outcomes are a blessing. You're not teaching people with lectures. You're teaching with your energy, your choices, your consistency. So the next time you wonder, why does he treat me this way? Ask yourself, have I been showing him how to treat me by how I treat myself? Because the more you love you, the real you, the more the world and the people in it have no choice but to match that frequency. You don't have to beg for what was always meant to find you. You don't have to twist yourself into a smaller version of who God made you to be just to keep someone in your life. You were never created to be tolerated. You were created to be celebrated. And the moment you stop chasing love and start becoming love, everything changes. Men can't resist women who detach, not because they're cold, but because they've gotten warm with themselves, because they've returned to their peace, because they've stopped trying to prove and started to be. These women don't throw fits. They set standards. They don't argue for clarity, they become clarity. And when that happens, it's not rejection, it's protection. It's not distance, it's dignity. A detached woman isn't running from love. She's removing anything that isn't love. She's not emotionally unavailable. She's spiritually discerning. And once she's tasted peace, once she's healed, once she's heard the whisper of God reminding her who she really is, she will never go back to begging, chasing, fixing, or proving. She knows peace is the new attraction. Emotional control is her superpower. Self-love is her standard. And detachment, that's not punishment. That's her positioning herself for God's best. You teach them how to treat you, not by raising your voice, but by raising your value. You don't have to force love when you're walking in purpose. Because the man who is meant for you, the man God has called to love, cover, and lead you, he will never ask you to lower your light just to make him feel comfortable in the dark. So stand tall, stay soft, keep your crown on, walk in peace, in power, and in purpose. You don't have to prove your worth. You are already worthy. And the moment you believe that, the world and the people in it will rise to meet you there.